You've been told it's about war. You've been told it's about peace. But what if it's about something else entirely? What if a tariff war halfway across the world has nothing to do with Russia or Ukraine, but everything to do with you? The new Cold War isn't what you think. This is not just a trade war, it's a geo-economic power play, and at the center of it all is India. Welcome to the truth behind Donald Trump's tariffs, why they're really being used, who they hurt, and what no one is willing to say out loud. Chapter 1. U.S. Imports from Russia, the Hidden Trade Hypocrisy. The data, 2022-2025. Let's start with the truth. Despite publicly opposing the war in Ukraine, the U.S. never fully stopped trading with Russia. According to the U.S. Census Bureau and USTR, in 2022, the U.S. imported $14.5 billion in goods from Russia after sanctions kicked in. In 2023, it still stood at $4.7 billion, largely due to uranium, platinum, and palladium, minerals critical for U.S. energy and defense sectors. As of mid-2025, U.S. imports are still over $3.0 billion, even as Trump imposes 25%, 50% tariffs on India. EU imports from Russia, according to Reuters, The Economist, and Eurostat. EU nations continue to import LNG, liquefied natural gas, from Russia. In 2024 alone, Germany, Hungary, France, and Spain collectively imported over $41 billion in Russian energy. Russian fertilizers and metals still quietly make their way to the EU. China's imports from Russia, 2022-2024. Summary. According to General Administration of Customs, China, GACA, total trade surged from $190 billion in 2022 to $244.8 billion in 2024. In 2024, China imported $129.3 billion worth of goods from Russia. Major imports: crude oil, coal, petroleum gases, LNG, total fossil fuels, $95.2 billion, 2025 trend, June. China's imports from Russia, $59.3 billion. In India's trade with Russia. India, unlike the West, openly trades with Russia. In 2022, it imported only $9 billion worth of Russian crude. By 2024-2025, India imports 35-40% of its oil from Russia, worth $37 billion plus annually. India pays via rupee-ruble swap, non-dollar arrangements, or discounted terms. Shocking reveal. Trump says India is funding Russia's war machine. But what about America's own uranium deals with Moscow? So why only punish India? Chapter 2. The real reason behind Trump's tariffs. U.S. economic collapse? Let's break it down. U.S. debt and domestic struggles. U.S. national debt crossed $38 trillion in 2025. Social Security, Medicare, and infrastructure spending are at unsustainable levels. Manufacturing jobs haven't returned in expected numbers. Trump's solution: raise tariffs to protect American jobs and bring back factories. But experts like Paul Krugman, Brookings Institute, and even World Bank say tariffs act like taxes on American consumers and destabilize global supply chains. The political motive: Trump's core voter base in rural Midwest, Ohio, Iowa, Kansas. Rust Belt states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, are primarily farmers, blue-collar workers, manufacturing communities. He needs to show strength against foreign threats, boost demand for American-made goods, create the illusion of job recovery, and India becomes the perfect economic scapegoat. One reporter asked, "Mr. Trump, if India stops buying Russian oil, will you remove the tariffs?" Trump shrugs. "I'll think about it." One reporter asked, "But the EU and US buy billions from Russia too." Trump deflects, "I have no information on what they're buying." Fact check. He does. Chapter 3. Trump's demands from India and why it's a ticking time bomb. What the U.S. wants under Trump's America First deal framework, the U.S. wants access to India's 1.4 billion strong market for dairy, chicken and beef, processed food, e-commerce, pharmaceuticals. India refused. Here's why. Impact on India's agri and dairy sector. Over 58% of India's population depends on agriculture and allied sectors. India is the world's largest producer of milk, but the industry is hyper-fragmented and sensitive to price shocks. Opening up to American dairy with hormones, GMOs, would kill millions of small dairy farms, destroy local cattle ecosystems, collapse rural livelihood in states like UP, Bihar, Punjab, Maharashtra, trade war impact on Indian farmers. In Ludhiana, over Rs1 lakh crore, 12B, worth of textile and agri orders now at risk. Small farmers exporting rice, sugar, vegetables now face delays, red tape, tariff hikes up to 50%. It's not just trade, it's economic blackmail. U.S. economic interests and strategic tariff politics. This isn't about oil. This isn't about war. This is about saving a collapsing American economy and using India as the scapegoat. America's financial crisis behind the scenes. As the 2025 U.S. election nears, Donald Trump faces an uncomfortable truth. America is drowning in debt. National debt has crossed $38 trillion. Interest payments now exceed $1 trillion annually. Social Security and Medicare are under strain. Manufacturing job promises remain unfulfilled. Rural America is restless, unemployed, and angry. So what does Trump do? He uses tariffs, not just as an economic tool, but as a weapon. Tariffs, the silent tax that hurts everyone. Trump labels it economic patriotism. But behind closed doors, it's revenue generation. Every time a tariff is imposed, prices of imported goods rise in U.S. markets, American consumers pay more, and the government pockets the difference. It's a silent tax on the American people, says economist Joseph Stiglitz, and it's sold under the banner of nationalism. But there's another goal: political optics. Trump's voter base demands protection. Trump's most loyal voters live in Ohio, Iowa, Michigan, Pennsylvania, small towns dependent on agriculture, textiles, and coal. These regions have lost jobs to globalization, suffered due to automation, seen rising prices and falling hope. Trump promised them a revival. We're bringing jobs back. We're bringing factories back. We're putting America first. But when factories didn't come, he needed someone to blame. India became that target. Why Trump is targeting India? Trump claims he's punishing India for buying cheap Russian oil, blocking American products, refusing to open its dairy and poultry markets. But the real reason? India is one of the few large economies still growing. Its $3.7 trillion economy is still protected, price-sensitive, and self-reliant. That makes it a perfect pressure point. Trump's trade war strategy now demands full access to India's 1.4 billion person market, reduction in India's import tariffs, permission to export American dairy, chicken, beef, wheat, and pharmaceuticals. India's dairy sector. What's at stake? Over 100 million Indian households depend on dairy. Small-scale farmers with 2 to 3 cows form the backbone of the industry. They sell milk to cooperatives like Amul, which stabilize prices and provide jobs. If subsidized U.S. dairy enters India, prices collapse. Co-ops shut down. Tens of millions lose income. This isn't trade, it's a takeover, says Verghese Kurian Foundation. What about U.S. poultry and hormone-treated meat? U.S. agriculture lobbyists want access to India's chicken and beef markets. But most Indians don't eat beef. India bans hormone-treated meat. Local meat producers can't compete with U.S. factory farms. India resists. Trump retaliates. Behind the scenes, U.S. agribusiness lobbying. Behind Trump's tough talk is the National Milk Producers Federation, American Farm Bureau Federation, big pharma and food giants. They've donated millions to Trump-aligned PACs and candidates. In return, they want export channels to India, trade protections, bilateral deals with no safeguards for India. Trump becomes their spokesperson on the global stage. Economic coercion dressed as diplomacy. In 2023, the U.S. revoked India's GSP trade benefits, impacting over $6 billion in exports. By 2024, Trump floated 25%, 50% tariffs on Indian garments, generic medicines, steel and aluminum, chemicals, and electronics. Why? India won't let our milk and chicken in. That's not fair, Trump said. This isn't diplomacy, it's blackmail. The illusion of free and fair trade. Trump says India is not playing fair, but India's average import tariff is 13.8%, while Brazil is 13.4%. China is 9.8%. U.S. has non-tariff barriers, subsidies, and protectionist policies. So, who's really being unfair? Impact on India's exports. Indian industries now fear order cancellations from U.S. retailers, loss of market share in garments and pharmaceuticals, price hikes on essentials exported to the U.S. Already, Ludhiana reports losses of Rs 1 lakh crore in textile exports. Surat, Panipat, and Kanpur industries see layoffs. Pharma exports are rerouting to the EU and Africa. The damage is real and growing. Expert opinions. Trump's tariffs are economic imperialism. Raghuram Rajan. India is being punished for independence. Arvind Subramanian. This is about 2025 elections, not Ukraine. Brookings Institute. Double standards, press conference lies, and Western hypocrisy. The truth isn't just hidden. It's being buried beneath a mountain of lies, deflections, and hypocrisy. The viral press conference. In a press conference that made headlines globally, a reporter directly asked Trump, "Mr. Trump, if India stops buying oil from Russia, will you remove the tariffs?" Trump's response? "I will think about it." He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. Just, "I'll think about it." This wasn't diplomacy. This was blackmail in broad daylight. Then came another bold question from a European journalist. "You say India funds Russia's war machine by buying oil, but the EU buys more. Even the U.S. buys Russian goods. Isn't that also funding the war?" Trump's answer, "I have no information on what they're buying." That's not just false. It's a blatant lie. Who really buys from Russia? Verified data. U.S. imports from Russia after the Ukraine war, 2022-2024. Sources, U.S. Census Bureau, Reuters, UN Comtrade. Uranium, 1.2 billion a year, U.S. remains top buyer. Fertilizers, 1.8 billion a year. Industrial metals, $900 million. Other fuels, including LNG and coal, $750 million total U.S. imports 2024, $5.5 billion EU imports from Russia 2024. Sources, Eurostat, European Commission. Oil and gas, via Turkey and India, $45-50 billion. Metals and rare earths, $8 billion. Fertilizers and chemicals, $6.5 billion total EU imports 2024, $60+ billion. China's imports from Russia 2022-2024. Total trade surged from $190 billion in 2022 to $244.8 billion in 2024. In 2024, China imported $129.3 billion worth of goods from Russia. Major imports: crude oil, 108.5 million tons, $62.6 billion. Coal, 10.5 billion. Petroleum gases, 13.2 billion. LNG, 8.3 million tons, $5 billion. Total fossil fuels, $95.2 billion. Russia's dependency on China, 2024. China made up 47% of Russia's crude oil exports, 46% of its coal exports, 22% of LNG, 27% of pipeline gas. 2025 trend, June. China's imports from Russia, $59.3 billion. Look at these figures once again. India imports from Russia, 2024. Source, Ministry of Commerce, India. Crude oil, $48 billion, much of it refined and re-exported to the EU. Fertilizers, $2.4 billion. Coal, $2.3 billion. Total India imports, 2024, $52.7 billion. India does import heavily, but it also sells refined fuel to the same Western nations criticizing it. So who's really funding the war? It's not just India, it's the entire West, hiding behind a curtain of convenient politics. The hypocrisy of the West. Trump's narrative paints India as the villain. But let's look at facts. The U.S. buys uranium, a critical nuclear material, from Russia. EU nations buy gas and diesel through third-party countries. American companies still do business with Russia through shell operations and legal loopholes. Yet only India is tariffed, publicly called out, and threatened. Why? Because India is an independent economic power that dares to say no. This isn't about war. It's about markets. Trump repeatedly says these tariffs are punishment for funding Russia's war machine. But ask this. Did he impose tariffs on Turkey, which bought S-400 missiles from Russia? Did he target Saudi Arabia, involved in the Yemen war? Did he penalize China, which quietly trades with Russia? No. Only India faces direct, repeated tariff threats. This is not about war. It's about geopolitical leverage and market domination. Why this matters to you? If you're an American viewer, you're paying more for imports. You're being told half-truths. Your country is alienating strategic allies. If you're an Indian viewer, your pharma, dairy, and textile sectors are suffering, your small farmers are threatened, your sovereignty is being compromised for someone else's election win. All this while Western hypocrisy goes unchallenged. Closing this chapter, Trump's tariffs are not about war. They are not about peace. They are about control, economic, political, and psychological. And when a nation like India resists that control, the tariffs start flying. How Trump's tariffs are crippling Indian farmers and small businesses. When a tariff hits a product, it doesn't hit a billionaire. It hits a farmer, a weaver, a mother running a dairy, and no one tells their story. The Indian farmer's reality. India isn't just a country of software engineers and startups. It's a nation where 54% of the workforce is in agriculture. Over 85% of farmers own less than 2 hectares of land. A single bad season or price fluctuation can push families into debt traps. When Trump imposed new tariffs in 2024 on Indian agricultural exports like dairy, basmati rice, spices, and processed foods, it hit the smallest producers the hardest. Many of these exports go to Indian American stores and Asian markets in the U.S., creating a loyal demand over decades. Trump's tariffs disrupted that supply. The war on Indian dairy. India is the world's largest milk producer, with over 75 million rural dairy farmers, most of them women. Their average monthly income is $6,000 or $8,000, $70, $100. They rely on cooperatives to export ghee, milk powder, and paneer to the U.S. Trump's import duties on Indian dairy products, up to 120% in some categories, are not protecting U.S. farmers. They're simply making ethnic Indian products more expensive. Result? Indian producers lose income. Indian American consumers pay more. Big American dairy companies gain market share. Small business, big blow. India's handicrafts and apparel sector. India's handloom, textile, and handicraft sectors employ millions, especially in rural states like Rajasthan, West Bengal, and Uttar Pradesh. These small exporters depend on low tariff access to the U.S. market. Under Trump, Generalized System of Preferences, GSP benefits were revoked in 2019 and never restored. New textile-specific duties in 2024 added 15-25% cost on Indian clothes, bedding, and handicrafts. That meant U.S. buyers canceled orders, artisans lost livelihoods, China and Vietnam took over the market share. Economic numbers don't lie. According to India's Ministry of Commerce and WTO data, in 2022, India exported $6.5 billion in textiles to the U.S. Post-tariffs, by 2024, that figure dropped to $4.1 billion. Over 1 million informal jobs were lost in India's apparel supply chain. Farmers in Punjab faced drop in basmati rice exports due to stricter labeling rules. Tribal farmers from the Northeast lost spice export contracts worth millions. And all of this was done under the banner of protecting American jobs. But who is it really helping? Here's the truth. Trump's tariff policy is shaped not by logic, but by lobbying. Big dairy corporations, farm associations, and textile lobbies in swing states are key Trump donors. He's targeting India because India doesn't allow free entry of Walmart and Amazon in agriculture. India protects MSP, minimum support price, for its farmers. India has price controls on medicine and dairy. And that's what Trump wants to change. He doesn't want India to stop buying oil. He wants India to open its markets to American corporations. Political strategy, not economic strategy, according to Pew Research and U.S. electoral data. Over 60% of rural voters in the U.S. voted Trump in 2016 and 2020. Trump's tariff policies are designed to signal pro-farmer patriotism, even if they hurt U.S.-India relations. He's playing a game. Use India as a scapegoat. Blame India for Russian war support, and win votes by pretending to be tough on trade. The real cost of tariffs. Let's be clear, these aren't just trade decisions. They're destroying rural livelihoods in India, disrupting diaspora supply chains in America, making basic goods more expensive for U.S. consumers, and all for a headline. Tariffs, truth and the future of U.S.-India relations. When two great democracies stand divided by deception, the world suffers. And today, that deception is spelled in 5 bold letters: Tariff. The breaking point. Trump's trade war on India isn't just about money. It's about respect, diplomacy, and the right to economic independence. India is the world's 5th largest economy, a long-standing strategic partner of the U.S., a counterbalance to China in the Indo-Pacific region. Yet Trump treats India like a disobedient child, punished for acting in its own national interest. India is an independent country, so can act in its own national interest, obviously. The real reason behind tariffs. Let's drop the mask. Trump's tariffs aren't about the Ukraine-Russia war, aren't about protecting U.S. farmers, aren't about fair trade. They're about winning elections, appeasing lobbies, pushing American corporate interests into foreign markets. And in that effort, he's willing to sacrifice decades of India-U.S. diplomatic trust, the livelihoods of millions of Indian workers, the truth itself, the bully tactic. This isn't the first time the U.S. has used tariffs as a weapon: on China to force tech trade deals, on Mexico to push immigration policy, on EU for aircraft subsidies, And now, on India to pressure oil and agriculture markets, Trump's message to the world is clear. Do what I say or pay the price. It's economic blackmail in the name of nationalism. The cost of lost trust. India once shared a mutual admiration with the U.S. Shared values, democracy, freedom, sovereignty, shared goals, defeating terrorism, balancing China, shared people. Over 4 million Indian Americans bridging both worlds. But these tariffs are breaking that bridge. They breed distrust among Indian policymakers, anger among Indian businesses, resentment among Indian citizens. And that plays right into the hands of rivals like China and Russia, who are eager to exploit the rift. What needs to happen for a better future? The U.S. must stop using tariffs as tools of coercion. Leaders like Trump must respect India's autonomy. India must continue to diversify its alliances, and the global community must call out hypocrisy. This isn't just about trade, it's about choosing between domination versus diplomacy, bullying versus brotherhood, truth versus propaganda. A final message to the world, to our audience in the U.S., EU, and India. Don't fall for headlines. Don't accept hypocrisy as policy. And don't forget that behind every tariff is a real human life affected. Tariffs aren't just taxes. They're tools of control, and it's time we start asking, who's holding the hammer? And why? End note, if you believe in truth, fairness, and global cooperation over greed, share this story. Because only when we expose the lies can we rebuild the trust. Thank you for watching.